Hello and welcome once again to Let's Talk Criterion, and in this edition we'll be looking at the 1975 film Picnic at Hanging Rock. Now this is an Australian produced feature directed by Peter Weir. Peter Weir is one of the continent's most accomplished directors. He directed one section of the three-director feature film Three to Go from 1970, which won an AFI award and really got him noticed. He followed that up with his black and white short piece Homestale from 1971, an offbeat black comedy co-starring rising young actress Kate Fitzpatrick and musician and comedian Graham Bond. Most people recognise his later work though, such as Gallipoli, Witness, The Mosquito Coast, Master and Commander, Dead Poets Society and The Truman Show. Now in 1975 he turned his attention to the 1967 published novel written by Joan Lindsay and set at the turn of the 20th century. Now the film relates the purportedly true story of a group of students from an exclusive girls' school who mysteriously vanished from the school in a picnic on Valentine's Day 1900. Widely credited as a key work in the Australian film renaissance of the mid-1970s, Picnic at Hanging Rock is an unusual film in that it claims to be based on a true story. But when interviewed at the time, and even asked by Weir himself, the authoress, Joan Lindsay herself, wouldn't admit what part of it, if any, was a true account. However, the viewer can be led to believe that it has a truth about it because of its apparent documentary and somewhat dreamlike style, right down even to the quote at the start of the film itself from writer Edgar Allan Poe. What we see and what we seem are but a dream within a dream. Now it encapsulates the mysterious and haunting atmosphere that pervaded the novel itself. The film's set in the turn of the 20th century Australia and at a girls' preparatory school where the headmistress, Mrs. Appleyard, arranges a trip to a local attraction called Hanging Rock with her students, accompanied by the peculiar mathematics teacher Miss Greta McCraw, Vivian Gray, and the young French teacher Mademoiselle de Poitiers, Helen Morse. Mrs. Appleyard doesn't go on the expedition, but keeps Sarah, Margaret Nelson, an orphan girl, and jittery teacher Miss Lumley, Kirsty Child, at the college. It all appears to be going rather well when the party arrives for a light luncheon at the foot of the rock, and three girls, that's Miranda, Minnie and Irma, and another girl called Edith, tag along. The three girls decide to explore the area and leave Edith on her own. But pretty soon, Edith is seen running and screaming down the path. She has lost her companions, and it transpires that Miss McCraw has also gone missing. Two young men nearby see the girls pass by, and that's Michael Fitzhubert and his friend Albert Crundle, played by Dominic Guard and John Jarrett respectively. The party returned from the Hanging Rock, distraught and somewhat dishevelled, after their ordeal with four of their assemblage missing. The headmistress reacts by calling the local police and a search is instigated. So far so good. Now it's not so much what happens in the film as the sinister way that it happens. Ingenious Weir uses music very effectively here, leading up to the girls' embarkation onto the promontory itself, including Bach's Prelude No. 1 in C from the Well-Tempered Clavier, the Romance movement from Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik, the Andante cantabile movement from the Tchaikovsky String Quartet No. 1, Opus 11, and the Adagio in Poco Mosso from Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 5, Emperor. And there's Georgie Zamfir's panpipes, setting the scene on the rock itself with a haunting and insistent musical motif. And this is accompanied by a deep resonant bass boom, which suggests something powerful and malevolent is at play within Hanging Rock, and the use of slowed motion as well, indicating something is affecting time itself in the area, further emphasised earlier by two of the characters' timepieces ceasing at 12 noon precisely. Now Peter Weir also used the excellent camera work of cinematographer Russell Boyd, who modelled it on the work of Heidelberg's School of Australian Impressionists, active in Victoria in the 1880s and 1890s. leading Heidelberg school member Frederick McCubbin also lived in and often painted the Macedon Ranges and the setting and filming location, of course, for Picnic at Hanging Rock. To achieve the look of an impressionist painting for the film, director Weir and the director of cinematography Russell Boyd were inspired by the work of the British photographer and film director David Hamilton, who had draped different types of veils over his camera lenses to produce diffused and soft focus images. Boyd created the ethereal, dreamy look of many scenes by placing simple bridal veil fabric of various thicknesses over his camera lenses. The beautiful imagery captured using this technique is what gives the film its ethereal feel, and it has caused many to categorise it in the pagan folk horror genre. Now, I wouldn't quite go that far, as there is no real moments of sheer terror, rather a sense of overall foreboding. And this is somewhat pre-shadowed earlier in the film by the nobility displayed by Miranda, who appears to have an almost clairvoyant sense of what is about to occur before they even go on the trip itself. On the surface, compared to Sarah, she appears to lead a simple and privileged existence among a perfect family. And to that extent, the other girls also all come from rich backgrounds. Although, as demonstrated later by Mrs. Appleyard, played by Rachel Roberts in the film, some of those families haven't paid their fees. Now, from time to time, we are reminded of the colonial nature of Australia at that time, still under imperial control, with the portrait of Queen Victoria in the school building, and also the playing of traditional British songs, God Save the Queen and Men of Harlech in one scene. Now, the enigmatic nature of the film means, of course, that although there is a mystery of the missing girls and their teacher, the mystery is never fully solved, even though one girl is found by one of the young men later in the film. On closer observation, there appears to be a clumsiness also with the delivery of the actual dialogue in the film, but that's clearly deliberate on the part of the director, who strictly controls all that we hear and indeed see in this film. The apparent inept style of awkwardness displayed in their communication, as well as their behaviour generally, only serves to enhance the overall effect the film has. This is certainly one of Weir's most accomplished works. Now, the film got its theatrical release on 8th of August 1975, and it had a running time of 115 minutes. It was a somewhat longer cut, with extended scenes in it, including one boat scene with Fitzhubert and Irma. But in 1978, Weir decided to revisit his film and make some judicial cuts and trim the film's length to 107 minutes. For many who'd grown to love the original theatrical cut, this didn't sit well at all. But in more recent years, the shorter version has generally been preferred for better overall pace and is generally better received. And it's this version that Criterion present in this 4K UHD upgrade. Filming began in February of 1975, with principal photography taking 6 weeks. Locations included Hanging Rock in Victoria, Martindale Hall near Montaro in the rural South Australia, and at the studio itself of the South Australian Film Corporation based in Adelaide. Now, we recall that when the film was first screened in the US, American audiences were very disturbed by the fact that the mystery remained unsolved. But despite this, the film was still a critical success, with American film critic Roger Ebert calling it a film of haunting mystery and buried sexual hysteria, and remarking that it employed two of the hallmarks of modern Australian films: beautiful cinematography and stories about the chasm between settlers from Europe and the mysteries of their ancient new home. Now, for many, the film still remains a chalk and cheese film. You either like it or indeed you don't. One thing that could cause you to reevaluate the film, though, is this latest stunning 4K restoration. Now, I've had the original Blu-ray in my collection for some years now, and it's a particularly oversaturated look to it, but this new restoration has given it a clarity it didn't have before. Overall, the image on this new 4K release looks very good indeed on its own, but in direct comparison to the previous Criterion release, its significant improvement is immediately obvious. It was never designed to look consistently razor sharp, so don't be put off by the often hazy images produced, and these are wholly intentional and designed indeed to invoke that dreamlike feel through the visuals. The use of DNR across parts of the image does seem to be baked into the master, recently approved by Weir himself, yet strangely it seems to add to the woozy visuals, almost heightening the strange mood that the film is so successful in conveying. Not being aware of the colour palette and tone of the theatrical release, this richer, more vibrant aesthetic may not please some who are used to the more desaturated look of the previous release, but this new image looks so much more alive for the viewer. It was immeasurably more pleasing for me to watch, and it looks even more like a painting, but rather not as faded, but sharp, as if you're viewing it at its very first public exhibition. And it takes away a little of the softness also apparent in earlier transfers. And even the subwoofers get a nice workout too in this version, in a DTS Master Audio 5.1 mix, especially in the hanging rock scenes, where the ominous rumble of the atmosphere of the rock itself takes some effect on you, and it makes quite unsettling. Now, the original camera negative has been used and scanned in 4K resolution on an Ariscan XT pin registered scanner, as the original negative hadn't been recut to produce the 1978 director's cut. Director Peter Weir's final edit was digitally conformed by the restoration supervisor Wojtek Janio, and the digital cleanup work was carried out at Fixafilm in Warsaw, Poland, while colour grading was by colourist Gozia Gzip in association with Peter Weir and Russell Boyd. And what is more, for the first time since the initial standard definition presentation of the director's cut on Criterion, this release presents Picnic at Hanging Rock in its original 1:66:1 aspect ratio, taking full advantage of the HDR grade set out to be respectful as opposed to revisionary. It exploits the full potential of this new post-production and home video technology. And I have to also mention the British label Second Sight, popular with many collectors, released a massive box set 4K HD last year with a 130-page bound booklet and art cards, as well as a copy of the original novel by Joan Lindsay. Now, I do know the novel, of course, was in earlier versions of the Criterion release, but it's not present in this release. And Amazon produced a 6-part mini-series as well in 2018, starring Natalie Dormer. Reviews for this, however, were poor. Now, the film comes across 2 discs, one a 4K HD Blu-ray with HDR, and the second a Blu-ray with the same original features as the previous release had. Interview with Weir, programme on the making of the film itself, featuring interviews with executive producer Patricia Lovell, producers Hal McElroy and Jim McElroy, and cast members. Introduction by film scholar David Thompson, author of the New Biographical Dictionary of Film. On-set documentary hosted by Lovell and featuring interviews with Weir, the actor Rachel Roberts, who played Mrs. Appleyard, and source novel author Joan Lindsay. Homesdale from 1971, the black comedy I mentioned earlier, directed by Peter Weir, a trailer, and an essay by the author Megan Abbott, and an excerpt from the film scholar Marek Haltoff's 1996 book, Peter Weir, When Cultures Collide. And the cover art is by Eric Skillman. This sensual and striking chronicle of a disappearance and its aftermath put the director Peter Weir on the map and helped usher in a new era of Australian cinema. Picnic at Hanging Rock comes with a 178:1 and 166:1, that's the director himself's preferred aspect ratio. It has a running time of 107 minutes, and it comes to the collection in a 4K UHD combo with existing spine of 29. In the next edition, we'll be looking at the 4K UHD release of Werkmeister Harmonies. That's the 2000 Hungarian feature from Bela Tar and co-director and editor Agnes Heranzinski. Until then, from me, it's goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.